Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. Hope you're well and you've had a good couple of weeks. While I was on holiday, I read a couple of books. Now, I only ever read, generally, autobiographies. I have no interest in fiction or other books, if I'm honest, but I'm fascinated to find out about people and how they succeeded and got to where they got to. Particularly comedians and also musicians and sportsmen. They're the three main topics I tend to go with. The first book I read while I was lying on a beach and by the pool was Adrian Edmondson's autobiography called Berserker, which I must say was brilliant. I am old enough to remember watching him in The Young Ones, which was the first time that I was aware who he was. One of the things he says in the book, and I found this quite interesting, really, is like me, many people, when they hear his name, think of The Young Ones, and he is strongly associated with that programme. And I think he'll possibly agree, it was really his big break that put him onto national television. However, he goes on to explain he only actually spent a total of 15 weeks working on The Young Ones, and that includes the week it took for them to record the single and the video for the charity record they had with Cliff Richard that went to number one. If you think about that, that's a very small section of his life to be one of the main things you think about when you think of him. What I hadn't realised was, because I didn't really watch it at the time, I'll confess, The Young Ones actually launched pretty much at the same time the comic strip did on Channel 4. So instantly, he and the rest of the team were making television programmes for both the BBC and Channel 4. His life story is fascinating and the book is so well written. It's funny, it's entertaining, but it does deal with some difficult situations as you go through it. And it kind of explains via the book, as you would with an autobiography, how what happened in his childhood probably led to what he ended up doing and the way he ended up doing it. But also, he just does seem like one of those people who was just destined to make it and be famous in one way or another, whether it was through comedy, acting, which was his first love, or music. He's mastered them all and had success with them all. Basically, I had forgotten how much he'd done from the comedy shows, TV presenting, acting. He's been in his own successful touring band. And I'll only mention it briefly because he does. He is, of course, married to Jennifer Saunders as well. Every now and again on social media, old clips appear from some of the Bottom Live performances and indeed the television show. And you forget how brilliant, funny, and in many ways brutal that was. He goes on in the book to talk about the writing process behind the television show and the live shows as well. And their aim, basically in the writing room, was just to make each other laugh. That was the goal. And they figured if they were making each other laugh a lot, other people would laugh. And they were absolutely right. And as it turned out, Bottom was the longest running project that he was involved in. Now, I'm actually quite jealous of Adrian Edmondson, not just for his glittering career, but also because he was in a Star Wars film, had a named role, and was the first person you saw at the beginning of the film. How cool is that? That is absolutely brilliant. So that was my first piece of holiday reading and thoroughly enjoyed that. On a very similar theme, the next book I read while I was just relaxing and lazing in the sunshine was Lou Sanders' What's That Lady Doing? Now, I've been aware of her for quite some time. I saw her first at the Old Rope Comedy Night, which used to be held in a pub in London, just off Oxford Street and Regent Street. It's now in the Comedy Store every Monday. It's a new material night run by Tiff Stevenson, and it was always a great night out. I used to go there quite regularly at one point about 7 or 8 years ago. Most Mondays I did try and get down there. It was brilliant. They got so many great comedians down there who were coming down to try out new material, either for tours they were putting together or if they were having to do some topical jokes on a TV show that week, they'd come and test out some of their jokes down there. The atmosphere was just perfect. Everybody knew what the deal was. It was people trying out generally new material. And the reason it's called the Old Rope Comedy Club is genius as well. On the stage, they have an old rope. And if the comedian's new material is not going that well and they just need to lift the audience, maybe even make themselves feel better and get a laugh, if they do some old, tried and tested material, which they know will get a laugh, they're supposed to grab the rope just to demonstrate that. Anyway, the first time I saw Lou perform was at the Old Rope. And instantly, I thought she was brilliant, very funny. I liked her from the start. Also saw her compare a few nights down there when Tiff, who normally did it, couldn't make it. Again, she was excellent at that. So that kind of put her on my radar. And then I went for a stage over 2 or 3 years of always going to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I used to go for a long weekend when I could try and book some accommodation, which is very difficult in Edinburgh over that festival if you don't want to spend thousands of pounds. Anyway, that's another story that lots of people have covered in quite a lot of detail. The last time I went up to Edinburgh for the festival before COVID hit, so in 2019, what I tend to do is I will plan who I want to see before I go up there, but I'm not organised enough generally to get the tickets before I get up there. So I will buy the tickets on the day, but I've already decided at least 2 or 3 comedians who I definitely want to try and see. And then there'll be some others who I'll just take a bit of a chance on. Now, as I was already aware of Lou and her show, it was getting really good reviews in Edinburgh because I was going up a couple of weeks after the festival had got underway. When I tried to get a ticket, there wasn't one. All sold out, no chance. Then she put on an extra show one night in one of the venues and I managed to grab a ticket for that. And somehow I ended up in the front row. Now, she does like to talk to the audience, but luckily I managed to avoid that and I was kind of right in the corner, so kept my head down a bit and got away with it. That show, by the way, was absolutely fantastic. Really, really good. She's gone on to make quite a few TV appearances since then, which is great and is well deserved. And of course, she's currently on Dancing on Ice as well and doing great on there. Back to her book. I didn't really know too much about her backstory. The book covers quite a lot of dark things that have happened to her in her life and happened to a few other people. She doesn't shy away from any of the subjects, very honest with exactly what she's gone through in life. But there is such humanity and humour running all the way through it. It is quite an inspirational book, definitely worth reading. She's had problems that she's tried to solve in various ways, problems that we all kind of have, but we all deal with things in different ways, particularly when it comes to addiction and mental health and situations we found ourselves in, not of our own making, that then we need to get our heads around. She suggests a lot of good things to do, but most importantly about the book, she seems to have had a habit of getting herself into some amazing situations, clearly very focused. When she decided that she wanted to make it in television initially and then comedy, she worked so hard at it. As it happened, she also references Logan Murray. She did one of his courses right at the start when she was thinking about moving towards comedy. I've done a Logan Murray course, an 8-week course, thoroughly enjoyed it. And at the end of the course, you end up doing your first little bit of stand-up. That was clearly a bit of a catalyst for her. And from my experience, Logan is a great guy. And those courses are so much fun. You spend the entire 8 weeks laughing, you learn a lot, and then you get to try your hand at stand-up, which is exhilarating. I did it as part of the Fringe Festival in 2012, and I was lucky to be able to go back and do it again 5 years later in 2017 when they asked some of the former people back to do it again. So that was great fun, and I've done a little bit of stand-up comedy here and there since, and it's one of those things that I kind of want to return to. She, on the other hand, is absolutely stalwart it and flying. In her younger days, she somehow managed to get herself into a band with a group of her friends, and they were getting booked for some quite big and impressive festivals that she went along to perform at, even though they couldn't apparently particularly play instruments that well. But it seems like they put on quite the stage show. There's a lot of self-reflection in the book, and also as well, you can kind of see how she's kind of grown, dealt with things that have happened, moved on, and actually kept a very positive outlook generally about situations and trying new things. It is, I think, if you are in need of a laugh or you've been suffering, as I mentioned earlier, from addiction or mental health problems, it's a fun and entertaining book, but you'll get more from it than that. It's well worth a look. I really enjoyed it, and there's some very funny bits. It is very entertaining. It will make you laugh as well. So I enjoyed that. That was my holiday reading from my most recent holiday. Now, we were on holiday in the Dominican Republic for a couple of weeks at the start of January. So that meant for over 2 weeks, we had all our food prepared for us in one way or another. Now, my girlfriend Linda, she enjoys cooking. She likes making things. She had over 2 weeks of not making anything, and I really did benefit from that. The first weekend we were back after holiday, in that not only did she make me some gluten-free homemade bread from a new recipe she had found, which was fantastic. It tasted so good, so much better than the bread that is gluten-free that you can buy in the supermarkets. She also made me a gluten-free Victoria sandwich with blackcurrant jam and cream filling, again, which was amazing. And she cooked 2 meals for us that weekend. The first of which, we went old school, we went basic on this, was a classic burger night with her Tuscan fries. I say her Tuscan fries, it's actually a Nigella Lawson recipe, but I absolutely love them. They taste amazing. So she made some of those for us to go with the burgers, and we enjoyed that on the Saturday night. Then on the Sunday, to mix things up, and she does like trying new things and experimenting a bit in the kitchen, she did us a lentils and mushroom lasagna, which I have to say was delicious. Fully vegetarian, fully gluten-free, so ticking a few boxes, including mine, and it tasted amazing. So I was just so lucky to have so much home-cooked food for the weekend. I think she may have got that out of her system a bit now, and I'm going to end up having to take her out to a few restaurants once again. But I enjoyed the food nevertheless. If you've heard this podcast before, you will also know I'm not really a big film watcher. Never have been. There's so many classic films I've not seen. So for me to watch a film is quite a big deal, generally. We did watch one the other week, though, that I had been wanting to see for a while, mainly because the guy who stars in it and directs it is a Tottenham fan, which always scores bonus points for them, in my opinion. And also, I'd watched the previous film in this series and really enjoyed that. Plus, the place where it was set was somewhere we visited last year and somewhere I really enjoyed going. So I thought it would be nice to see that on screen as well. So after we had our burgers, we sat down to watch The Haunting in Venice, the Poirot story with a Kenneth Branagh slant in that he stars as Poirot and directs it. The cast were brilliant, as they have been for all of the remakes he's been involved in. They get some great actors in there, and it is just so well done. It was great seeing Venice. I spent most of the first 20 minutes of the film just looking and enjoying all the places that I visited, and it brought back great memories of the time we had there. I would definitely go back to Venice. As ever with these things, because it's an Agatha Christie story. The plot is very cleverly and nicely woven. It is tricky. It is difficult. You desperately want to work out who did it before Poirot does, but he always just gets there before you. I was trying really hard, and it's so clever how it's done, because you, at some point, think it's pretty much every one of the main characters who, in these films, always seem to get locked in the same room or same house, of course. That's exactly how every Poirot murder seems to work, which does make it a little bit easier for him, to be fair. He's not got to run around half the country or even a county looking for people to interview. They're all in the same place that he is. Nevertheless, I, if I'm honest, didn't get it, although I did pretend to Linda I'd cracked it after the first 5 minutes. I hadn't, nowhere near. I would recommend seeing it if that is your kind of thing. While we were away, we did miss quite a bit of TV, so we were busy catching up with that over the last couple of weeks. And I did manage to see the New Year's Day Taskmaster special. I am a big fan of that programme. I think it's very cleverly done. The way Alex Horne and Greg Davis host it, treat it, is just perfect. It's just good fun. All the people that are on it fully embrace it, get immersed in it, and have a right good go at it. I once stood next to Alex Horne at the bar in the Soho Theatre in London. I wanted to say hello. I was just about to go and speak to him, and then someone he knew came over, so I didn't want to be rude. But he has done a sensational job devising and coming up with all those tasks. As ever, it was a mixed and strong lineup of people taking part. One thing I did notice, though, and they all fell foul to this. I'll give you some advice if you ever get to go on Taskmaster. And here is the advice. Always look under the table. And some of the tasks you'll do better if you do nothing rather than doing anything. They're set up that way. They're designed for you to fail. At least one of the tasks in that New Year special falls into that category. They could have looked under the table. It would have helped them. Some did, but what none of them realised was if they'd have sat there doing nothing rather than trying to do the task, they would have definitely won the task. That is the genius of Taskmaster sometimes. Can't wait till the next series. Taskmaster is one of those programmes that I think if I ever got on it, I would be amazing at it. But in reality, I would probably be terrible and give David Baddiel a run for his money. I don't know if she felt left out that I am on my special gluten-free diet for my celiac or not, or just fancied a bit of a change, or more likely was just intrigued or interested. But Linda has decided to have a go at this Zoe eating experiment. It's set up so you get a monitor, basically, and it will look at your blood sugar levels every time you eat over a 2-week period and try and work out if there's any foods that you're having in your diet that maybe are not that great for you and cause a bit of a spike in the blood sugar levels, and maybe you'll feel better if you avoid them. I think that's kind of the premise. If you want to find out the correct information of exactly how it works, I'd find it online rather than taking my explanation. But anyway, as part of it, as well as me having to stick this thing into her arm that you scan into an app and that she's got to wear for a couple of weeks, I did that, and she got a bit upset with me actually, because there's a plaster you kind of put over it, a very sticky sort of super strong adhesive plaster, and she's very neat in everything she does. I managed to get it slightly crinkled when I put it on, which, to be fair, because I was doing her a favour, she seemed very calm outwardly, internally, seething, I imagine, because it just wasn't neat enough. So I'm sorry about that. I did my best, but I got the scanner thing in and I did get the plaster over the top to keep it on. And it did stay on for the required length of time. The other thing they do is give you a couple of cookies. Now, one of them is a cookie they want you to eat for breakfast. It's obviously made with certain ingredients that I presume will mean it will give them a control on your blood sugar levels. And then the other cookie they give you that you're supposed to eat lunchtime on the first full day that you do this Zoe experiment is blue. Why is it blue, you ask? That was exactly the question I asked. And as it turns out, What's the best way of explaining this? It's to monitor how long food takes to be digested and then, shall we say, expelled through your system. And you know when that particular cookie is leaving your body because there's a certain blueness to things. Now, this amused me way more than it should have. I will be honest. It made me think of the Smurfs, and maybe is that the colour that their poo is? So when she was taking this blue cookie for the entire day, I just kept sending her gifs of the Smurfs, of anything I could find with blue in it. I kept trying to send her clips of the Eiffel 65 song, I'm Blue. It just thoroughly amused me. We were keeping a blue update of how things were going. Thankfully, there were no photos. I think we both agreed that that was not the way forward in any situation. Although part of me would have been interested to see what blue poo looks like. I'm guessing Play-Doh, but I don't know. Anyway, that amused me. We'll see at the end of the 2 weeks whether the feedback suggests she might have to give up some foods that are actually not good for her. She is a massive fan of bread, and she is slightly concerned that bread may be causing the issue. From my point of view, if it's gluten that happens to be causing her any problems and she has to drop that from her diet, that would make my life a lot easier and make things a lot simpler when I'm trying to suggest what restaurants we eat at, because I only really want to eat at restaurants that are either fully gluten-free or are celiac accredited. I damaged my back a while ago before Christmas, and I did go to see a physio initially. He gave me some exercises to do and sent me away for 6 weeks. Then I went back and saw him the other week. Now, I'd been doing all of these stretching exercises to try and improve my flexibility, which is terrible. I've been working really hard, did them twice a day, exactly as instructed, and I went back to see him, and the first thing he did was test me to see how much my flexibility had improved. I thought this would be great. He'll be really impressed here. I've done all the exercises. It'll be brilliant. It'll have shot up by loads. No, there was such a tiny, minuscule improvement. It was almost quite upsetting. So therefore, the next hour, he bends my arms, legs, back, around in places and directions I'm not sure they were designed to go. And I was a bit concerned at one point when he got this strap thing out and started using that to ratchet my legs around in various places. It's the sort of thing that it just feels like at some point your leg's just going to snap off, but weirdly it doesn't. And it hurts, but not as much as you fear it's going to hurt, basically. So I got through all that, and then he sent me away with another exercise program for another 4 weeks. This one is absolutely brutal. There's some exercises on there that, in the face of it, seem and look very simple and straightforward. But when you actually do them, they really hurt. There's one where you stand with your legs apart and initially face your feet out at 45-degree angles. You bend over to 90 degrees and rest on the table, and you've got to wiggle your hips while keeping your legs straight. Sounds simple, it's not. It's really difficult. And then the next one is to have your feet straight. That gets harder. And then the last one is to have your feet pointed in at a 45-degree angle, bent over at 90 degrees, and try and wiggle your hips. Sounds simple. It really kills down the back of your legs. I'm sure it's doing me lots of good. I'm working hard on them. It's sad, isn't it? I'm kind of treating it like he's my teacher and I want to impress him. So I'm doing all I can to make sure we try and improve my flexibility. And also as well, the back still isn't fully healed. So it's all part of the healing process for that. But we're getting there, I think. Have been back to Tottenham since our holiday with some mixed results. I watched us get knocked out of the FA Cup by Manchester City by 1-0. To be fair, City were the better team. The way they pass and move, the speed they move the ball around and the way they move themselves is amazing. They are a fantastic football team. Although I will say, the goal that won it for them from a corner, 9 times out of 10, you'd probably see that chalked off for a foul on the keeper. It wasn't this time. We lost the game 1-0. We move on. Then in the next home game I went to, we played Brentford. We were very poor in the first half, and there was lots of gamesmanship from Brentford, and it was all sort of getting a bit silly with the players arguing and pushing each other. And we went in 1-0 down at the break, a little bit disappointed. Anyway, within 8 minutes of the second half, we were 3-1 up, which was great, and the place was rocking. Brentford featured their striker Ivan Toney, who had just come back from quite a long ban for a betting offence, in that players really aren't allowed to bet on themselves or their own team, and apparently he was caught doing that. So he was over-celebrated, we felt, when they went 1-0 up with Neil Maupay. When we got into the lead and were 2-1 up, some clever person behind our goal area started to chant, "Ivan Toney, you should have cashed out," which caught on great, and basically the whole stadium was singing it. Just a bit of fun, and it was going well until our fullback sadly passed the ball straight to him and he scored. Well, I guess he deserved that. Hopefully he'd backed Brentford to lose and himself to score. I am enjoying going to the game still. The way we play football at the moment is great. We're having a go. And our manager, Ange Postecoglou, every time he speaks about any subject in the world, it just makes sense. I absolutely love the man. Think he's fantastic. Bring on the rest of the season. And in the words of Doris Day, whatever will be, will be. Valentine's Day on the way this week then. Just a quick reminder that if you do have boyfriend, girlfriend, other half of some description, even if they say we're not doing anything for Valentine's Day this year, do make sure you get at least a card. They don't need it. I think I've got everything sorted and organised on that front. I think for Valentine's Day, I will be taking my other half to a slap-up meal at a celiac accredited restaurant, possibly Cote, Pizza Express or Prezzo. I know, I'm quite the catch, aren't I? That is just about it for this week. Just the usual reminder that you can hear my radio show Saturday afternoons between 2 and 4 at radio9springs.com. Thanks very much for listening. Look after yourselves and each other, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.